here we are. Yeah, hello. Yeah, here we are. It took me some time, but here we are finally. I don't know what really else to say right now. I, what a hard time sometimes it is to wake up, anyways. Uh, Hi, and welcome yet again. Dear Sincere, welcome. Really, here we are. I don't know. I don't really know what to say. Uh, Things. I guess here we find ourselves yet again. So that's certainly something. That's everything that I can say so far. The process of being alive, I guess, is quite funny enough so that we end up being in this place, and certainly in this case, even if I have missed a little bit what might have been the initial desire to do anything, um, we are still trying to, in any particular shape, go for something, no? Although certainly it might not be the most direct way of anything, because I can also yeah, I can also quite feel myself exhausted a little, and there is no idea behind anything else, literally because of that. I can, I can pretty much feel, not that I do feel tired a little bit, so that's already more than enough of a reason for me to not want to try and add anything else, let's say, into this whole formula of, um, yeah, of streaming today, basically. But yeah, I guess, I don't know, I told myself something like, well, at the very least, we are trying to form the habit of properly streaming early, but I don't even think something like that does apply completely. And even if it does, uh, we are probably quite aimless. And I do I do realize that I don't have the most developed ideas to discuss, but at the very same time also I I don't even feel like trying to go for something like what we did yesterday, in terms of explaining and whatever. So yeah, it will be quite a lot more abstract as always in terms of doing things that are completely out there. I feel in terms of just, yeah, just being there and just turning off a little bit the rest. At least that's how I feel it, no? Turning off the rest of the senses in order to obtain the precious gift, let's say, of only focusing on whatever it is that we are discussing. But yeah, I I guess something like that is will be not just okay, will be beneficial. That's the word. That's the word. Sorry, and yeah, we will have to observe whichever kind of benefit we can extract from that. Even if I right now can't even find one, but yeah, uh, with that I am more than happy. So not that much more to add, I guess, or I feel like. But yeah, anyways, let me let me prepare this thing. I have 5 seconds. No, you know what? I will hide it. it is here. Easy. Anyways, hello, hello, people. Ah, we are again here. Hello. We are once again, let's say, um, finding ourselves doing something and trying to, in any particular understandable way, also to do whichever thing is it that we do uh, continuously now. That's the main bare minimum that I am trying to aim to. That's the biggest reason as to also why, even if there is no real plan behind anything, we are still going to try to, in some capacity, do anything. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, uh, let me let me change this thing so that I don't keep thinking about it anymore. It was something like, okay, there it is, something like that, I guess. There it is. Just in case to make that already clear enough. Yeah, as I said before, I don't certainly feel like anything else might be that beneficial. So I decided to. I guess this whole week will be, to a certain extent, weird because it will only be about that. Even if we had other responsibilities, at the very same time, that's one of the weird things, that you can decide whichever thing you want to do in a place like this, and having that capacity in this case ends up kind of not forcing, driving us towards trying to, in any way, pay attention. Not pay attention, simply try to pay attention. Yeah, try to pay attention to something more self-centered to a certain extent, certainly, because the ideas don't come from nowhere. They are only, more often than not, at the very least in my case, they come from what I had already been thinking a little bit and such. But yeah, um, I love that is more than enough in some extent or another, just in order to keep it all organized. But anyways, I I kept going with something different. The main thing was to say sorry. um, Hello, as always, it is a pleasure to be here. And as always, I hope everything is going fine. We will see what we end up really talking about later on. But that will certainly be a worry for our future selves. Um, because right now, the important thing is to say, as always, thanks for being here and welcome, everybody. Um, Welcome, lurkers, welcome, viewers, welcome, pod watchers, welcome, everyone. I hope so. And yeah, to in particular, also, certainly, we have yet again this incel to say hello to. And yeah, something that I wanted to add, not because it really adds anything, but because it was quite weird, or quite interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Quite interesting to observe. Not weird, but interesting was I saw someone who was also, uh, when doing his round of um, welcomes and such, he spent like 2 minutes saying hello to stream elements, and that was certainly something. That certainly was something quite interesting to view, and yeah, and to be an spectator of that. I don't know it. I wouldn't have expected anybody to do it, and even less the way in which she did it. Like, certainly, you already, I mean, you set it up consciously, so you already know that it is a bot and such. You wouldn't be trying to establish a conversation with a bot, But anyways, uh, funny thing that happened, and that is quite unrelated. So yeah, regardless, then, um, going back into the main point, here we are, and with that, I can say that we are, or that I am already satisfied. It it has been not so long since the last time. Certainly, it has only been I think a day, and yeah, yeah, we have we have a lot of stuff to cover. That that's still quite an issue, but regardless, I well, I have like okay. I have already discussed this before. Let me start from here. I have already discussed this before a little bit, and I want to do it now before it is later. Yeah, before it gets too late to make it quite an, let's say, quote unquote, a uncomfortable remark or something of that sort. Because certainly I know that people, although I don't realize or I have found truly a reason as to why that will be of such a nature. People doesn't really like to talk about uh, books. In this case, we are going back into this whole Das Capital. Books like that, certainly they are quite controversial and quite annoying to take into consideration. While in reality, and now for real, starting with uh, what has been my process and my progress also on that, uh, I said it wasn't that substantial, and although, okay, I can quite sustain what I said before. There are some problems that the book has, certainly, that are still being found out. Uh, Even if you are already almost at the middle point of the whole book, like I am myself. But the problem doesn't really lie behind the book, it rather lies inside of the notions that it requires you to have and such. And there are a lot of things that are being discussed that are simple remarks about the situation of the whole, yeah, reality that the capital capitalist societies are creating and such. And all of that was quite interesting because it certainly suffices the interest of, in any particular way, trying to learn, yeah, to learn and to properly integrate inside of your understandings, because it is also very well explained why all of those things that are being born out of such a society are bad. But the real things are not truly problems. Not, it will be dishonest to say not only of the capitalist society, it is something more like they are more problems of their era than anything else. I guess certainly if we had the opportunity of trying to make a reading of a book like this one with nowadays context of the world, it will certainly be different. But it still serves quite a lot of interesting purposes in terms of teaching you and giving you a lot of things, yeah, to contemplate and to dedicate your time to try and minimally, to the best, if it is that it is in your interest, to the best of your interest, uh, to guide you around the whole context that was inside of that era. Because I said before, the I I am sorry if they are not name like that. I haven't really checked, so I am guessing they are called footnotes. Those uh, notes left at the bottom of the page, basically, all of those certainly provide you with even more contextualization for what you are consuming and such. But the real problem, not problem, the real situation that is always underlying inside all of this is something besides just the main ideas and such. And even if you wouldn't believe that anything of this degree of reality will be interesting, you end up being quite surprised when you find out that certainly, at the very least, that is how I feel. Um, a lot of discussions pertaining to pure human nature are more than interesting, and also something quite foreseeable. Let's say is how much the whole, well, as far as I have read, the whole book kind of prefaces you with what will become later on the idea of no, populism. So it is quite interesting to take that also into account. But once again, going back to it, uh, the humanitarian crisis, uh, the multiple types of crisis, let's say like that, because I don't know the proper inflection of that word, uh, that were existing throughout the, yeah, the whole world in general around those times was the main topic, at least so far, of a lot of discussions that happen, and that by itself is more than interesting to pay attention to, and to in any way think properly as something that can truly help to paint later on what ends up being yeah, the motifs, let's say, as to why did the world certainly move towards the changes that we have nowadays. But it is quite an interesting book because of that, and it is quite an enlightening. I don't want to say enlightening. It is not of that sort of text. It is more like a feeling. Let's say like that, feeling type of literature in where or in which you can find a lot of ideas that later on do help you with this whole precept of minimally gaining, let's say, an even better understanding of what truly makes us be, let's say, free in nowadays world. At least that is how I had been feeling all of that right now. And even if this is not the most important discussion so far, I don't know what will be in the second half. It is still quite beneficial to try and consume it as much as one can. I believe so. And yeah, give me a second. Okay, sorry. I had to blow my nose a little bit. So, anyways, going back into what I was trying to say, it does happen that this book ends up being quite interesting to consider, as it does contain not just a little bit of um, cases of the situations in which people was living before. And that's why, as I said before, it ended up being not quite, probably, at least so far, considering everything that I have read up to this point in my life. I might, okay, I might probably certainly be be actually affected by the novelty of what I am consuming. Therefore, I might have a bias towards saying that this is better than everything else, as I am still immersed in this reading and I am still processing what I have read, certainly, but at the very same time, even if that were to be true, in this very same moment, I feel like the examples it presents in a lot of situations in in regards to what is this whole perceived of working and such are more than interesting and more than what I have, as I said before, up to this point, ever heard or been shown, let's say. And it does feel more than welcome to have the possibility of also, in any possible way, considering even more what is being given to one as a reader. All of those things, once again, going back into what I said, if you try to take it as something that also ends up showing you how this whole world in which we live in the present, not not in the whole history of humanity, in the present, in this very same instant, is good. And is, compared to that, infinitely better than what you could ever imagine. And I don't know, probably one of the few things that we lost were devices and similar. And certainly we don't have the possibility of in in any particular way indulging in all of those things as we would have liked to before, probably, but we still have the biggest of the chances of extracting from that particular time frame all of the narrations about a lot of the conditions of work and similar. And if you do it properly enough, I I feel like I certainly wouldn't know outside my own perspective because I just yeah I just have my own experience in this case. But you can pretty much feel how interesting it becomes to try and take those examples and those situations as something that can pretty much help you towards the I might lack a better word in this case realization of how much of an embetterment there happened to itself happen throughout the time. So yeah, to throughout the rest of the time, so that your present self will be enjoying so much more. Almost every single thing that this world can give them or can offer to them compared to those who were living in those times. Because certainly the conditions were horrible for everybody. And I think okay. I remember hearing something quite interesting once that can pretty much uh, or try to sum up at the very least what I was going to say with even more words. In the present time, there might be minorities that are suffering. In the older times, everybody was suffering, and that by itself was bad enough. Sorry, I had to sneeze. My bad. uh, no, yeah, I will need yet again another second. So please excuse me. Sorry. I guess that is one of the things of waking up and streaming. Anyways, okay. Sorry. Back to here. I was saying certainly that um, in the older times everybody was suffering, and I don't I haven't gotten yet to consume anything that paints that picture as good as this book has done so far. And I guess there is something that I want to address about it, but at the very same time, it feels too much to truly try to talk about it. The book has some parts that need to be experienced firsthand. There are some narrations about certain events, and even more certainly pertaining to this whole realm of what was later on abolished l- child labor. All of those things are also narrated in that. And if you can consume those examples and understand how incredibly better we live and how much more of a quality of life we have compared to people, that's when, as I said before, you can, to some degree, find that your life might not and might have a lot more possibilities compared to those kids and similar things. And that is also why I say, pertaining once again this revelation, that there has been no book as useful as this one so far for me in terms of painting this picture as clear as it did it. Because the way in which these things end up being described um, very much paints the clearest of the images about how horrible some problems were and how critically ignored they were also. But it it takes time and it takes also quite a little bit of I will say resilience to consume. It is there are some descriptions that are quite I wouldn't say horrifying in terms of um, wow, you read it and you can't keep reading because of how much of an impact it creates on you, or because it really strikes horror onto you. It is more like they are so appallingly dark and so utterly crude that what you end up observing there truly makes you see what ends up being by himself describe as that human cruelty that exists inside of the system that he was attacking in his time without realizing that the problem wasn't only the system but rather the people who were in the head of that system. And it it's there are certainly probably even today humans who live in very similar conditions, but most of the world, I will say probably being generous enough, 95% of the world has no more to worry about any of those situations. You don't see people dropping dead because of exhaustion that much. And even if it were to happen that you were to see them, you more than once will know that it was quote unquote their own fault because we have entered a society in which it is a lot more spread the idea of taking breaks and why they are indeed necessary. And you also observe a world in which, once again, this whole point of child labor, we have no more fucking child labor. And that, I certainly not having to go through the horrors of experiencing anything like that is quite good, I would say, and is quite refreshing as a human being to not be so tortured by the notion that certainly what lies in your hands was produced with the blood almost of somebody else, kid, not even grown man. But yeah, I I wasn't expecting that whole narration, and when I found it, and when I had to confront that, I was surprised. That is why mostly I have come here. Yeah. Give me a second, and I will say something else, and after that we move from topic. Give me a second. Okay. So what I wanted to say is there are a lot of particular. Fuck. Anyways, there are a lot of narrations, and there are a lot of stories that are being told about these things in the book. And after having gone through probably almost 3 hours of of stories about how kids were being abused and similar, that's the main point as to why I ended up saying uh, later on, you know, this this world is good, and this world is 1,000 times better compared to those times, and that era of philosophical thinking or whatever is it that happened there, and that's why not having to go through the horrors of living that in your own flesh and having only to confront that as a text that, at the very best, if you can, you will imagine. I hope there are no fucking images of that. You will learn about those realities and you will once again obtain the perspective as to why, to a certain extent, you might have yet another tool at your disposal in order to say, maybe my previous idea could have been that the world was bad. Now that I have seen how much worse it was before, maybe it isn't as bad. Maybe. And that I believe is more than enough so far. Because once again, I do not want to talk about those examples. No, I do not believe anybody would want to hear about them in the flesh. I do think they are quite traumatizing. Certainly, uh, I still carry with me a little bit of that shock, and I will try my best to deal with that later on. But to consume Das Capital and to learn about those horrible worlds in which people were living before will give you, once again, another tool to realize that maybe we have more chances at doing anything that we want compared to those times and compared to those people who have also a lesser life expectancy. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, that's everything that I wanted to say. And is it everything? I don't feel it is really everything. I mean, okay, let me round it up. At least for today. I have been trying to read that book, and I have been trying to go through it, and there are a lot of parts that are quite annoying, and there are a lot of parts that possess no content at all, you know? But what ended up happening also was that I discovered how much of a pain it was to learn about the lives that were being lost every single day by kids, the situations in which the young ones were not even having the possibility of seeing the daylight and how utterly horrific it was to even think about taking a break for for some of them because of the punishments that they suffered in those works and similar things. And all of those discussions, even if they don't seem that important, are quite necessary to take into consideration and quite, yeah, I believe so, quite useful. I can't avoid but to also mention that certainly this book has a lot of uh, has a lot of observations towards what ends up being later on problems for the society itself as a whole, not just as I said before, not just for a system for capitalism or socialism or whatever, but rather societal crises that do exist or that did exist in those times, and that's the main importance of this book. The political aspect is almost a third place. I wouldn't even consider that secondary. But yeah, I will say if you have the mental fortitude to go through it, do so. It will be more than worth the time reading it or consuming it or whatever. However is it that you do it? But yeah, that's everything. I want to move from that, but I at the very same time wanted to say it because I feel like I wouldn't be properly doing my show if I say, oh no, yeah, it is a little bit better. No, it isn't a little bit better. It gets justified after the first third, let's say. It gets completely justified to keep reading it. Yeah. Anyways, sorry for not saying hello earlier. Welcome, Savannah. I hope you're doing well. Uh, yeah, that's the book, man. It is it is dark, but it is usefully dark, not just depressively obscure. It contains a lot of things that will be, for the one who takes upon that challenge, more than beneficial to learn about. But yeah, uh, that's what I wanted to say. Also, uh, how is it that you are in a gas station and you have a, well, I mean, yeah, probably they have internet over there. Here we don't have that many places. I think there is like one gas station who has internet on them for free. But well, one does whatever they can to enjoy whatever they certainly say that they enjoy. But even more so than welcome son. I hope everything is going fine. Hey, let me hydrate a little bit. I haven't had a drop of water as of today, so let me do that. Kill a mosquito? Yeah, I kill a mosquito. Anyways, so yeah, certainly I will see it. I don't think it is that hard, but it simply happens that in Argentina we don't have that technology yet, as it costs too much to maintain, and we are already running a lot of things at a loss. So it is quite impossible to find yourself with a gas station that has free internet. What I mean, yeah, in general, a lot of establishments don't have that. Even McDonald's itself doesn't even have free internet. Like it, I am pretty sure it does happen there, but I don't know. I guess with enough time, we will arrive at that level of development if we don't destroy ourselves in the process or something like that. I guess. But yeah. Um, well, I don't know. I mean, I have like 20,000 different questions, but I wouldn't like to overwhelm you. Simply like this one. Give me just this one. How is it that you're watching this? Do you even have headphones or something like that? I mean, is that normal there to go into a place with public internet and sit down just to use internet? I mean, yeah, it's something like that. But anyways, uh, sorry for asking too much. Continuing, I guess, or yeah, yeah. Uh, after having how much did I spend even talking about this? Yeah, a missile amount of like 35 minutes. Nothing, nothing at all. Understandable, understandable. Uh, Certainly understandable. I will say, but I mean, it still is like wow. It I don't know. It is an stranger concept to me, so I do have a not so easy time picturing anything of that sort. But anyways, uh, it is possible there, so that's what matters. As long as you are not told to leave, everything is fine, I guess. At 1 a.m., what? Isn't it like, no, wait, it is like summer already. Yeah, yeah. It isn't as cold anymore, but yeah. I guess it certainly is quite weird. Uh, I mean, it is weird for me, sorry. I Certainly it would be quite interesting to be in such places. Sorry. Weird it is only for me, not not for anybody else really. Uh, but you were under the rain just to watch a stream uh, in a gas station, internet, Wi-Fi. That's yeah, yeah. That's certainly some. As they will say, that's some dedication. I certainly. I guess that's quite a yeah. I don't know how to properly say it, but that's quite an amazing thing, certainly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also to enjoy it, I guess. But welcome, Alpin. I hope you're doing fine, bro. Uh, yeah, yeah. I guess that's the crazy thing. That's what I wanted to say. It is quite amazing to know that somebody supports you so much, and it is quite touching almost to realize that somebody is willing to go so far to be there for you in terms of that basically showing you that they enjoy what is it that you produce, that they are willing to take those risks. And no. Savannah, this is different, and you already know it. You were up to like 4 a.m. because you were being irresponsible. There are better ways to say it, but we are being honest here, you know? Being out because you wanted to watch a stream is different to being up at 4 a.m. because you decided that you weren't sleepy enough to go to sleep. But yeah, I get the point. But yes, yes. Still, that. Thank you. Uh, but yeah, I once again, it is quite crazy to see that somebody's willing to go that far. You know, it is quite surprising and even more quite motivating, I guess. I mean, one doesn't really expect to know, to see others so interested. After all, sometimes it is even hard for oneself to say or to find it interesting when they are doing it. So certainly, when others show you that it does have any particular type of worthiness inside of it, you can say then, you know, it might be worth continuing. But I don't know. Certainly, it is the constant and never-ending battle of also making it work by itself, even if nothing else is there for you to provide you with enough of a motivation, while at the same time being conscious enough of how necessary it is for what you produce to be in any. Well, I mean that's my rule. No, there are some others that don't go with something like this, but how necessary it is also to make it while being it entertaining for you, useful for others, because it doesn't only talk or exist for your own pleasure, certainly. And if you have the chance in this case of doing something good, why not do it good enough so that also others can, even if just a tiny fraction of the infinitesimally minimal degree of a 1% of an addition to their life, extract something good from what you are making, you know? So certainly it is quite beautiful then once again to realize that somebody is willingly to be there for you to such an extent. And I guess I don't know, probably that's what every single type of endeavor would benefit from. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't want to be a contrarian. I do realize that it is quite a beautiful thing by itself. But at the very same time, how much can you acknowledge that without feeling like you are by saying things enough times, imposing almost a responsibility onto the other person, you know? The other side has the freedom to do whatever they do, and you can't, if they stop being there, let's say, you can't feel bad just because of that. It doesn't really justify itself like that. And you can't even less say, I feel so, say things like, well, you know, if you were here yesterday, why is it that you can't be here today? Or something like that. Even if you don't realize that what you're saying um, has some malice behind it, it is quite harmful. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just thinking about it a little bit. I mean, after all, I think so. I hope so. I have never said something like that. So with that, I can say that I have my consciousness, my conscience clean uh, about that matter. But yeah, uh, enjoy your walk, Savannah, and thank you for passing by. Please take care of yourself. The streets are. I hope not. But if that if it were to happen here, the streets are quite dangerous. I hope they are not there. Yeah. Uh, I don't know that completely foreign concepts. Sorry, having a hard time picturing any of that. I guess, but yeah, I that's that. I guess I don't know. I That's everything. Goodbye, goodbye. Thank you for being here, Savannah. Thank you a lot. Once again, take care, please, and well, be patient. It will fix itself later on, at some point, whenever it can, probably. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, what an amazing, what a what a beautiful gift, almost. It certainly is. The last thing that I say about this, it certainly is a pleasure to see that somebody else is also capable of finding it. Because once again, uh, the process of creating anything a lot of times involves you as the creator searching more than what is really necessary, what you are trying to make. Not because it really deserves to be judged so harshly, but rather because your ideas and your machinations tend you to make you believe that all of that is um, quite destroyed, let's say. But yeah, amazing, I guess. How have I been? I certainly have been quite well. Quite. I feel like everything has been going fine. I have been entertained. I Yeah, I have had some tests where closing in slowly onto midterms. So we are. I I know they are called midterms. Those who are in before the recess, but I don't know which name is it that they mock test. I think they are or something like that. Uh, we are having mock tests for the mid tests, so we are quite full of uh, not homework. Yeah, things to study, and it has been quite a crazy week lately. Uh, it has been still going well. I I think so. And besides that, everything else has been also going quite well. I had some minor problems here and there, but as always, they get easily solved. Let's say, and yeah. If you want to say Albina, there is literally no problem. If if not at the very least, I hope you have been doing well. I I well, I hope nothing really deep happened yesterday involving that CEO Guesser game and such. Certainly, yeah. Oh, that game is funny in regards to what happened. It has a tendency towards that. Yeah. Yeah. Certainly, that's something interesting. Let's say, but well, it it can happen, and at the very least, it wasn't directly. Oh my God! Yeah, Alpin Alvench lives in this city, in this street, in this home, exactly like that. It was just maybe he lives in this place of the whole map. But yeah, that's that's funny enough. Ah, that's that's surprising. Yeah, that's surprising. Let's say I I don't know how to say it. I thought it wouldn't have happened. It couldn't happen to you, but yeah, it did happen. We so anyway, everything has been going well for you too. So I hope so. So that's more than enough. I guess that's more than sufficient. I so, but yeah, I don't know. I guess moving on to something different. I guess that when let me see. Yeah, through this whole process of trying to learn about a lot of different ideas, I had come into the realization of there are a lot of different terms that we end up needing to develop by ourselves. Certainly, that doesn't sound that deep, but what ends up happening is in the process of doing something like this, what you find out is how surprisingly complex it is to find proper definitions for something, and how even more hard it is to get proper, it's supposedly basic terms and supposedly basic notions properly imprinted in your mind in terms of I wouldn't have expected in my case to find it so much of a hard task to properly and I am still in that process get what ends up being a definition of moral and morality, similar things. Not because it is hard, the first statement of that, let's say, you can pretty much say something in that very same examples along the lines of certainly what is moral is what suffices the societal rules that had been established. But the problem is the more you try to properly give it an exact definition, or the more considerations you have towards those ideas, the harder it gets to get into any particular place of understanding. And it has become one of the hardest tasks for me, at the very least, to keep going with that whole path, realizing that not the process itself of defining anything is hard, but rather that the process of intaking whatever is it that others might be using as their definition and seeing, considering, and even discarding sometimes if what is being used in those moments is or not in some way or another applicable to the notions that one possesses. And it, I mean, that's very basic still. That happens almost every single day when you have conversations with others and you find out that they possess different optics compared to you, certainly. But the main problems is, or the main problem, sorry, is still all of these things are more than useful in my case, based also on the way in which I aspire to live as a human being, let's say. All of those things are quite interesting to consider and quite useful to properly determine with as much certainty as possible. But when trying to do it, you also realize how in, impossible it becomes to some extent. And even I feel like, at least in my case, all of this work is also quite hard to perform because you do not only realize that it is hard by itself, but also that it is hard because we haven't even tried to define anything like that completely. It is like somehow, as human beings, we are supposed to assume what is moral without ever having had an exact amount of human beings, let's say, something minimally eh, clear to try and get a proper definition about something like this. And even if, because, okay, this is a little bit more advanced, even if we are talking about morals and the morals themselves of the societies keep advancing the more they realize the problems that the previous rules they had um, need to be abolished, but it still doesn't mean that you can have at the very least a draft of something that can guide you towards the proper creation of later on comprehensible rules that can follow those principles in this case. And the problem is, how can you believe that it will be an easy job to live in the world when you lack such things? I, I believe in this case, I am getting a little bit heated up, sorry. Um, I believe in this case, we are considering something like morality and such. And if you don't even possess in your hands something so properly understood like that, and you try to be part of this world, you end up later on finding yourself being those type of people who basically has to deal with the, I believe so, problem of realizing that what you personally are going for ends up not being what morally aligns with the world. And although to some extent you can still blame yourself for that, we don't have a proper definition. How am I going to believe that I will at any given point in my life arrive at something that will truly give me the complete understanding about that if I have to make it up on myself almost? And I'm sorry, I don't know, I don't think it is that much of a complete problem. I have I have seen that by simply focusing on trying to understand it, you get to a lot of places. In the case of something that has been discussed extensively, at the very least, you can patch the problem of not having a real exact definition by gathering yourself around the definitions of morality that have been given throughout time, as it does happen with a lot of social sciences ideas and ways to consider life itself. And even one of the many principles inside of what can be called philosophy itself, let's say, that is to keep always striving towards discoveries and knowledge that can be useful to you. That the very same principle applies here. Because even if you don't get to discover, let's say, okay, this is exactly what being, in this case, moral means. There is no exact definition. At the very least, you have to build up something that can, to some degree, give you a sense of, yeah, of direction towards what can try to be called morality. And from that, probably keep moving into something else that can be solved with a lot more easiness than that. I will say, but that has been quite a painful process. As I said before, I didn't realize how much of an annoying thing it was until I consciously said, okay, you know what? I am lacking this exact definition. I keep seeing that it is being mentioned here and there, and it ends up happening that there is none exact definition as of today. So I have nothing to truly support myself on in terms of trying to absorb whatever knowledge is associated with all of that, or is somehow not mystically. I was going to say mystic, uh, directly or to some degree associated with morality itself, as it does happen with a plethora of ideas related more than anything else with, once again, philosophy and psychology and similar things. And yeah, I don't know. I It takes time. It is annoying, but it takes time. And it can be done. That's the most important thing. It can be done that you can to some extent find a proper definition and guide yourself around this whole mess of a world in that sense. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, to a certain extent, I am thankful that I am not forced to give one, because certainly, once again, I don't possess exactly one that I would say fulfills my wishes of believing that what I am talking about is solid enough. But yeah, it is, once again, it is annoying to realize that we are so advanced in some things, while at the same time we are completely in, in the beginning. But I don't know. I guess at the very least you can say something like, because we're at the beginning, there are also so many possibilities of affecting the course of those problems that you can find how beautifully important can every single human being who wishes to be a participant in the action of change, yeah, of moving ourselves towards any of those uncompleted things, that by merely striving with a 10% of your whole self, you will probably become as influential as it gets right now. Because, once again, there is so little job done on some aspects that the amount of discoveries that can be made by just one human, by one single soul, will surprise everybody who didn't expect that to happen. And in my case, I am blinded by my understanding about the world, and I can only talk about um, quote unquote social sciences, as they are commonly called. But that probably happens throughout infinite amounts of situations in life, and that can be more than enough of a motivating factor in almost, yeah, in almost any particular field, which it is possible to get even deeper. So yeah, I guess that's the good side of that. I tell myself that at the very least, instead of just being angry that in this case we don't have a proper definition for something that we have been using for so long. How is it that we don't have it? What was the point behind trying to coin such a term if you're not going to give it a proper definition? But anyways, that's the idea that I have been spending some time lately on, and it has been quite certainly quite annoying. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's still, I mean, quite differently, but at the same time on the same line. Morality is surprisingly easy at the same time to get when you are dealing with social groups and similar, because a lot of things that do happen inside of the moral boundaries are determined by those groups in particular. They are not created by the whole resume of people who exist in the whole world at every single instant. The moral and obviously even more societal rules are created by those who find themselves interlaced with one another. And the morality that overall reigns in those situations is quite easier to get. But the problem arises once you are trying to understand it in a quote unquote deeper level. And because a deeper level of understanding of something of this sort requires you to be capable of abstracting anything that is associated with your own self and what is your own perspective and what is your own side of your own existence, and being capable of placing morality itself in the void. What does that mean? good luck defining that. It is still a humongous task to try and take on. And once again, I many times have I said it once again, trying to do it. Maybe it's not as hard as I make it seem, but it is certainly annoying because we have spent thousands of years having at the very least consciousness. How is it that we don't have definitions like that? But I don't know. The surprisingness of being alive, I guess. I mean, in general, being alive is still as surprising as it gets. This world is certainly the most fantastical thing that has ever happened. I think I haven't seen even a fraction of fantasy out there that can imitate the amount of um, fantasy itself contained inside of what is our reality. And that is by itself more than enough. Because if you take into consideration, for example, into the previous discussion of morality, that 1,000 years ago, we were probably not even developed enough to try and think about morality as something that can be a problem, and something that does need a definition, because our main concern was to barely survive the situations in which we found ourselves submerged. It will be a completely paradoxical change to see that now we have the leisureness to discuss these things, and we have the pleasure to do it whichever way we want to do it. And to see that not only we are doing it, but also that we are even more capable than almost anybody living in those times, because the simple reality of our capacities is such that we have, and I wouldn't want to insult anybody, but you can't even negate that we have, as humans, at the very least as humans, evolved so much from those thousands of years ago that we are completely different in that sense. In We can properly delve into such a discussion. We can have it for hours on end if it is necessary, but it will have some useful result, and that will more than enough suffice the necessity of what is the actual problem. In this case, as I said before, just establishing what is proper morality and what can truly be a definition of moral and such, but it can happen almost with any singular topic. I mean, yeah, once again, social sciences do have that easiness side of them. Um, the natural slash exact sciences are different. Certainly, I am happy that I didn't choose something like that for my for my goals. But that's quite wonderful to not have to spend thousands of years gathering every single proof that can show that we have complete certainty over phenomena of this world. That's quite good. Ah, but I don't know. I mean that's still probably a lot more not useful, a lot more fulfilling to know that you have proven something that can't be in any particular way contradicted. That is more than beautiful also. So you can see why those type of sciences are so amazing. Yeah, I don't know. We are delving into a realm in which I literally have no idea besides the people that I know that does them. So yeah, I don't know. Let me drink some water. That's everything that I want to say so far. Let me drink some water. Thank you. Okay. Wait. Give me a second. Okay. Now there it is. Also, there is smell. I love Argentina. Precious country. Anyways, so continuing with something different. Hmm? Yeah, yeah. I I was trying to stay minimally hydrated. I mean, well, yeah, 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 yeah. Alpin. Let me ask you this. I sorry for putting this spotlight onto you, but you're somebody who does a lot of fitness, and you're somebody who concentrates a lot on the benefits of being physically healthy. And how much water do you consume when you're streaming? That's the real question. In my case, I have next to me almost that. Yeah, sorry for being for using the metric system. I have 2 liters of water. I think that is like 4 ounces. I think so. I don't know how much. I don't know ounces. My bad. I 2 liters. I have 2 liters. I don't know how much it is in ounces, but yeah. Um, basically, that. How much is it that somebody like you consumes when you are streaming? That's quite a question. Um, but I mean, I have 2 liters and I try to finish them for when I am done with streaming. You also go that fast. It is fine. Amazing. Okay, okay, okay. I see. I see. I see. Nice. Then I am on one hand surprised, on the other quite. I will say I expected that at the same time, but wow, yeah. Anyways, uh, certainly hydration is good. Yeah. Uh, a gallon, what the fuck? 4 liters. What? How do you. What? How do you link 4 liters? But 4 liters are already unhealthy. I mean, even even if you pee, and yeah, even if you excrete, let's say like that, every single unnecessary ounce, you're already washing your organism because the amount of liquid consumption that you're no wait yeah you're I forgot about the fact that you are fit. Probably somebody like you and Kuromaru certainly need those amount of hydration. Yeah. I certainly. I see it. I see it as a necessary so that you don't live constantly uh, with tense muscles and such. Yeah, my and not so hard to picture once you take into account that you are a fucking unit, man. Yeah. It makes sense. It makes complete sense. Uh, yeah, yes, certainly. That's why I was basing myself. I mean, I forget that I always have the picture of somebody completely normal talking, and sometimes I forget that we have people like you, for example, who are completely fit, and I that is quite surprising because to an extent you end up breaking completely the mold with some things like I mean amount of food that you also consume is probably something along the lines of somebody who, if they didn't realize enough physical activity, um, they will be incredibly overweight. I think so. I remember that. I think it was Fufi who mentioned something like that. That yeah, people like you breaks the mold, but in the opposite direction of so surprisingly refined that it works better. But yeah, uh, that's more than good. I mean, that's the dream of almost every single guy, you know, and that's that's certainly something more than more than desirable to have, and more than inspiring, because that's also part of the whole side as to why somebody like you is so interesting to hear, because you're not just saying stuff to say, you are preaching with your own example, and you are already somebody who is incredibly applied in those sense. So by itself, it is already more than worthy to know that once again, it who is saying those things is somebody who has been on both sides. I unfit and completely fit, and that's quite motivating. But yeah, it it is once again. I mean, I believe so. Um, Almost every single guy's dream to be like that. After all, I mean, even if you don't focus on something like what is it, the social aspect of being fit and how the world perceives you, because you have no necessity over that. Still, the mental aspect of being more physically capable is still more than rewarding, and more than, yeah, more than capable of stimulating your brain in different ways so that you can see yourself in a better picture in a lot of areas. And also, besides that, obviously, the benefits of having a better circulatory system that allows your whole self to function at an even better performance. Thus, in this case, the whole process of, for example, thinking for somebody like you is quite different from somebody who is, once again, overweight in in the opposite end. And I don't know. It's always amazing to see that. I mean, it is one of those things that if you consider that enough, you end up finding out how almost necessary it is for anybody to be in such a state. And I I will I will not negate it. It is quite sad that we have lost the focus on preaching all of that with enough intensity. Um, well, I mean, yeah. One of the few descriptions that also have heard once was uh, a lot of depression is associated with the fact that you believe you have no capacity over controlling anything. That's why a lot of people who suffers from depression also find themselves being overweight, because you have to a certain extent, without being so harsh, um, giving up the control of your own body to external forces. And once you regain the most minimal and at the very same time important thing that is your own self, and you find that how capable you were of dealing with the problem that was your physical state, something that for so much time seemed impossible to properly tackle, you end up realizing that everything else is not so impossible. And you end up also obviously realizing that if you were capable of changing that thing which you did constantly, with how much more you would have the capacity of doing something of that sort with external things, you know? And so it is motivating, and it is uplifting. And once again, besides just the mental aspect of that, there are a million different benefits. But I guess certainly the problem is there is literally no way in which nobody can feel like that if you don't go through that process. And that is still one of the biggest problems, because as much as one wants to preach about this, there is, and I think so in this case, no better thing than to know how incredibly good you can feel by being in a better, in this case, physical state. That sometimes is, I eat less. Or, I mean, in your case, you are not even eating less. You already, as as we said before, you went already the whole loop, and you have positioned yourself in such a state that you can consume as much food as you want almost, because you need it literally to maintain such physique. So it is just finding the proper reasons to do it. But being in that state is not something that you can, out of nowhere, be given a second to know. I guess, I don't know, probably that is incredibly out of the proper discussion, no? But certainly, one of the biggest tools in terms of helping people to see a proper motive as to why fight such uh, such a problem like obesity will be certainly to give them that tiny fraction of, okay, this is how your body feels when you are not in such a state, when not everything inside of you is inflamed, and it has to deal with the increased loads of resources that it needs to move to everywhere, and also the unnecessary amounts of um, issue that it has to maintain to keep yourself alive. But yeah, I don't guess, or I guess we don't have the possibility of solving such a problem here. We are just saying that certainly it will be good, but I don't think we are going to discover the technology here out of nowhere. Like, wow, mental image transmission experience. No, something like that won't happen. Um, something like that won't happen today. Uh, although it will be quite good, but yeah, it won't happen. I don't know. Still, being fit is worth it. So that's the main message, certainly. But yeah, um, I don't know. I think I will drink some water. That's what I will do. That's what I know. Anyways, so sorry, completely cracked everything. Damn. Um, so I don't know. I have been lately thinking, I have been considering, now that we kind of introduced this idea. Uh, I have realized that it is quite complex not to arrive to a proper mental state. That is the easiest thing, to feel that you have achieved anything. Once it is easy, it is incredibly easy. It is, I will say, the easiest part of the whole process. But to maintain that idea, it has become quite, or not that it has, it always is a completely hard task to keep seeing things positively. And I this idea shouldn't be so much of an outsider thing. Certainly, in life we have a tendency towards, once we find ourselves being in pleasure, we have the necessity, because our brain is wired to do so, to try and detect which things might go bad next. Therefore, to try and see what is it that you are going to have problems next with is almost unavoidable. as a human itself. But the real problem doesn't lie just in that fact. The problem is it becomes quite a heavy load to only focus on the good things. And even more, the craziest thing is always also that when you try to see things in a good light, and when you try to only put your mind on what is alright to a certain extent, the tendency of the mind itself is not just to keep trying to find what could be wrong, but rather to try and even destroy what little happiness you had by I I feel like at the very least it happens in my case, showing you how everything could not just, as I said before, go wrong, but also could have not happened or could be even better than before. It is so incredibly hard to keep the brain in control and to keep the uh, this whole thing that we have read at this point like 20,000 times about, um, to keep your passions and to keep yourself under control. It is an incredibly hard task. And I mean, it happens not only with happiness itself, it happens with the ego, it happens with the image that we possess of what we are, and it happens with a lot of ideas that we create about the world in which we live and in which we reside. And a lot of times you even make yourself seem more, not just important, but more utterly meaningless than what you truly are. And yeah, it, it, it is quite weird to see also that it isn't truly explained like that, because it certainly is a lifetime process, and it is almost something that you will have to accept as eternal as long as you exist, because there will not be a point in which you will say, okay, I am full. I I mean, I said before some weeks ago, in this case, I was trying to read one guy who supposedly found enlightenment in his life. The problem is he is completely outside my reality, so it is quite hard to get him. But there are people like him who supposedly have found ways to not be swayed anymore. And I don't know how you can achieve anything like that, or if it is really possible, and if you are really just telling your own self that maybe I I am doing good because I am ignoring every other problem that really exists in my reality. The, the principle is to try and aim for anything of this realm of being alive, and fighting the problems themselves of being alive also, is to realize that there is not going to be a day in which you're not going to have a battle. But the very same problem is also to see it as something negative, is to lose on the process side of what can be the biggest of the benefits, and that is to give everything that you are doing a more than worthy enough reason. Because once again, if you can define a life goal that is suitable enough for you and that can be uplifting enough so that you can, without any single problem, know that even if tomorrow everything were to crumble, it was all worth it. If you don't conceive anything like that in the process of arriving to happiness, let's say, or to the process of trying to find happiness, uh, you will not get to properly enjoy being in this world. And that's so sad, man. That's utterly sad for those who can enjoy being there, I guess. Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Certainly, that's the thing. But I don't know. I guess I, although I don't really like it, to a certain extent, what you can always say is, well, as long as I am capable of keeping my own self safe and having things in my own life going all right, I can be happy with that, and everything else is comes afterward. Let's say, you know, every other thing is not so important. Once I have realized that in my own existence, I have things that are good. Certainly, although please don't understand what I say, certainly there is also happiness in trying to make others happy. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't even try to make others happy, and even less that you shouldn't even believe that you have the capacity of making others happy. But if you can't even suffice your own needs, aiming towards others will probably lead also to the incorrect path. So certainly, the beginning is always one. As we kind of discussed before, the beginning is your own body, so that you can do other things with ease. The beginning is your own mental state, so that you can take care of others with ease. The beginning is your passions, if you want to pursue anything at all. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it is just a repetition of the old. Wow, it takes time, and I I I certainly can't add that much to it because that's one of the few things certainly that we have quite defined before. And even if you can't really explain it, you already, to a certain extent, as a human being, know it. I guess the amount of repetition behind such a story makes it so that we have properly integrated that into our way of living. I I I guess so, no? But yeah, being alive, I guess, and similar things and similar mundane stuff. Anyways, so how much? What time is it? Okay, I need this time not to drink water, but to take a tiny, as they will call it, idle break. So people, what are you think? But give me like one, please. I to give second. Uh, so yeah, in like some seconds I will be back. But until then, enjoy the silence, the complete silence, emptiness of nothing. So, anyways, here we are. Hello. Yeah, I wanted to say that I am feeling a little bit angry, so probably we're not going to keep moving that much more. No, so yeah, uh, moving, moving. That's not the word. We're not going moving. Why did I say moving? Anyways, we're not going to keep going for that much more. Probably like 15 minutes or so. But I am angry, so yeah, I need to do something. I I will go on. I don't know. I don't even know if we have anything to eat. No. Anyways, yeah. So, hello. We are back. Uh, while I was gone, I I was thinking, and while I was thinking, I realized that I had an idea. Wow, that's a sentence. Uh, that means nothing. Um, so I was, yeah, I was, I was thinking, and I was putting a little bit of my time lately into this whole interest of consuming, you know. And we have quite discussed this multiple times, but it becomes quite inherently necessary to do it yet again. I believe so because you discover with enough information that there is always lack of even more, and not because you need to be over prepared or anything like that. I I have heard a lot of people talk about these things and really delve into them as if you were truly going to find yourself learning about things that will never happen. But once again, uh, we got this quite established literally yesterday. Uh, this whole notion of if you can create a properly discerning eye, you wouldn't be dealing with the problems of I don't even know if what I am learning or not is useful or not. Um, no, and all of that end up piling up in a process in which going back to this whole idea kind of self motivation and such, it is also never ending the amount of things that one can learn about almost any particular topic. I feel like, and that is although quite surprising, quite nice at the very same time. I have come to accept at some point I believe it is almost the same for everyone. You believe that there is by having too much of any type of information, you find yourself completely exhausted because there is really too much to learn about any kind of field that you want. But the desire to learn and the desire to use your time on whichever field of knowledge that you want, and only on that, can also be put inside of this formula because that is part of this whole process of learning. And that is one of the main definitions that we have been trying to get to with a friend, now that I also remember, because it seems sufficiently obvious so that it shouldn't need to be communicated, but at the very same time, we don't even say it enough. That the whole process of I am going to sit down and I am going to try and integrate inside of my whole map of ideas something new should be born out of your desires for something that is worth and for something that you know will be useful in whichever type of goal you have, not something that will literally be useless. And I mean, certainly we have problems and we have a lot of intricate ways in which we have made it not work as such in the lives of those who have to go through the educational system and similar problems because we established that it is necessary to have those knowledges before entering the world. But I have realized in this whole process that what lacks also is a proper message that justifies that experience and that gives you enough of a reason for you to believe that what you are going to go through, even if it directly doesn't feel worth it, is going to give you quote unquote all of the all of the tools that you need in life. And it has been surprising for me to realize that somebody like my nephew, who is very young, doesn't even have that many ideas in that sense and doesn't even have those realizations. He barely thinks that what is being given to him is in any way um, useful. And I mean, even if you believe, or even if you have quote unquote the proof that this tiny being doesn't have in his hands, um okay, sorry, doesn't have in his hands the capacity to understand the world to its fullest, like anybody will ever do that. What we are negating in the process of doing it is they can comprehend a lot of stuff, and if you give them a proper way in which they can see that what is being taught to them is necessary and is something that they should not avoid or should despise, you will see that one of the main problems of educational system, people being angry at it, will get solved. It isn't really, and this was one of the few quote unquote realizations that I had. You don't need to change everything. You just need to justify it enough. You know, that's literally one of the principles as to why a lot of bad things happen in life, and why, as they will say, the bad people did so much negative things to this whole world because they were capable of convincing enough humans of doing bad stuff, because they were capable of swaying others with their word. It is literally using the same principle but for something that is supposedly good. Supposedly. And it should take no effort at all when you have so many human beings working on this same thing, you know? But I don't know. Certainly I don't hope that anybody who is in the process of learning finds me and says, "Wow, um, this guy can give me some clues as to why it will be useful for me to learn about anything." I hope not, because certainly I am not going to do that, at least today. But man, it is quite crazy to see that the educational system itself doesn't have enough of a justifying reason behind it all, when it will be so easy to solve. I don't know, I am pretty sure in this case it will be once again the 2080 principle. The 80% of efforts into getting people to believe that they are going to gain anything by using their time like that, to make the kids understand it enough, because that is the best thing. You don't even have to lie to them. You have to enough a proper, real reason, and that's it. That's everything that they need to keep going. But no, what? Kids, you will go to school and you will suffer like we did in my generation. No, holy fucking shit. I don't need your trauma. Uh, I need motivation to keep myself alive. Next thing that you're going to tell me after that is, oh no, we are going to enter the world of shows in which I also suffered for 25 years before retiring. Holy fucking shit. Why is everything so negative? Why can't you give me something minimally good to move forward? But yeah, that was another thing that I was thinking about. Anyways, if it wasn't applicable to anything else, or if it didn't get the idea itself straight out there, it also applies to oneself to justify things instead of complaining so much about them, let's say, because it isn't in complaining that you will get anything to be a little bit better. It is in justifying that and in seeing what's worth behind your actions that you can keep doing them, you know? But yeah, it should be obvious. I am not saying, I am not stating anything new. It should be obvious enough at this point in life. But yeah, anyways, I got like, yeah, that's why I got silent. I got a message, and it's time for me to end. Let's leave it at that. It's time for me to retire. Stuff happens, so yeah. Uh, well, nothing really bad, certainly. But anyways, so oh, I don't even know. It has been quite a crazy thing, certainly. Whatever is it that we discussed today, we did certainly a short stream, but it is still a stream, so I am happy with that. Uh, Next time, I don't think so. I will try to wake up earlier, but I don't think Sunday, so no. Thanks to you, Salvin. But what? Anyways, what I want to read somebody. Let me see. Let me see if there is someone who we can read. Is there like some people at the same time? What's up with this? Um, I think the most sensible thing will be to raid Momo. I think so. Unless I'm missing something, no, right? Okay, okay, that's the decision then. So, anyways, as always, then while I set up this tiny raid, um, thanks for everything. It has been a pleasure, and we will see whatever we end up talking about tomorrow. Certainly, yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to leave that said here because I have already, quote unquote, ruined everything by by not doing anything else but talking. So tomorrow, probably, at the very least, I will try to do a list or something like that. But no reading, no content, watching, no nothing like that. Just me talking to the void and nothing else. But anyways, as always, thanks for being here, thanks for watching, thanks for looking the world. It has been an incredibly good time, as always. Thanks for all. Please keep yourself safe, keep yourself hydrated, keep being happy. That's the most important thing. And also rest if it is necessary. Do whatever you need. Now, anyways, the most important thing is we are leaving. We are going to raid Momomo, who is playing demos. So I don't know exactly which game is it that he's playing right now. It is a Dark Souls or a Souls like, yeah. But anyways, we will see each other next time. And even if we don't, at the very least, we'll show it whatever happened now. Anyways, on to the task itself. Raiding right now Momo, who is playing a demo of a Souls like. Goodbye, people. Be yourself safe and be happy. Goodbye. Oh my god, I cannot believe this. This is the hidden message that you were searching for. Wow.